let me tell you how important and how much I think about design. It lined up, I didn't do it here, but it lined up with this width right here, these three images. And also between them, the space was lined up. And then what I did was, because the images without a border they look great, but they don't look as good. So then what I did was I put a border around it with a thin line using Adobe Illustrator. And I used green, a very thin, it was, I think it was 2 points instead of 1. So you could see it, so it wasn't too much, but it was enough to give it a boundary. And then what I did was with the rest of it, okay, I had 2 larger pictures that were like that. And of course they were all lined up that way. They're all lined up that way. They're all lined up that way. And then I put a border here so that when you show this slide to investor, it's like they're seeing the text in summary, but it's like, wow, this is way too cool. So then I show different elements of this product or service. And then I, of course, explained it. So in this product service slide is you want to make it exciting. It's almost like the slide itself. If you just sent the slide out to somebody, whether they were investor, customer, partner, whatever, they'd go, wow, what a beautiful product. Look at all the features, benefits of it, customer testimonials, why people use it and all that. So, and you have to be very cognizant of the space too, because you don't want to make it too busy, but you want to make it attractive. And that's why I standardize this thing. Another thing I did not point out before is that you have to be consistent. So one of the things I actually catch myself making a mistake on is that if I, for instance, give a description of something, and let's say it's the main description and it's like, let's say it's 2 lines. Let's say it's 3 lines. The key thing is in PowerPoint presentations is that, do you put a period or not? My tendency is not to put a period at the end, because there will be situations where you have small subpoints where, from my perspective, it doesn't look visually appealing to have periods. So from a standardization and consistency perspective, I've actually chosen not to have periods at the end. And also, when you're doing these when you're doing these slides, whether you're using Illustrator or PowerPoint, make sure that your verbiage is, you're not writing a book. Key points, but make sure it's also grammatically correct. So you're basically writing, another way you can look at it, besides making a product for the investors, you're also developing a mini version of the business plan, which is kind of cool, because personally I don't believe in writing business plans anymore after writing 40 of them, okay? I do believe in doing very tight, extensive presentations that can be customized according to the audience. And also another way you can look at this is that some of the elements of this presentation can actually be used for strategic partnerships, to explain to customers the value proposition of your startup, your product and service. So the irony is that even though you're developing a startup presentation, startup pitch for the investor, you can use most of the components for your strategic partners, for your potential customers and distributors and all that. As an investor, I get so much information. There's so many different products and pitches and startups coming at me. And so if you come to me asking for money, okay, then what I want to do is I want to know how you're different than anything out there, okay? So if we go back and standardize, and this is, for me personally as an investor, this is one of my favorite slides, because it truly explains to me whether the entrepreneur or the founding team understands where they fit in the overall scheme of the market. This is, from my personal perspective, it's one of the most critical slides you can do, because nothing irritates me more than when I ask you, well, who's your competition? Well, we don't have anybody. Seriously, you don't have anybody. No. Well, guess what? You have 2 forms of competition. You have direct competition, and then you have indirect competition. There is no such thing as no competition. I really don't believe it. Even, for instance, if you look at entertainment as an example, if the entertainment industry says, well, we really don't, the internet does not compete against us at all. Well, it does, because you know what? Each consumer has X amount of hours to use. So are they going to use it for watching TV, watching anything, playing on an app on an iPhone, or being on a computer surfing the internet? So you always have some form of competition. And so what you have to explain, you know, classic case of Michael Porter, Professor Porter, he wrote two seminal books. One is Competitive Strategy, one is Competitive Advantage. I've actually met Professor Porter. I'm a big fan of his. I read all his books. And of course he talks about the dynamics of the industries, the infrastructure of industries, how the competition plays a part. And so one of the things I've learned from him is obviously is to always look at any market, any startup idea in terms of competition. So what you have to do is you have to have a competitive overview. And now in here, okay, you're going to have, for instance, differentiation. You have to explain how you're different. Okay, you're also going to, if you have enough space on this slide, is talk about your barriers to entry. Okay, all right. And then also you want to talk about, so you've got differentiation, barriers to entry, and then what you want to do is you want to have, and I love doing this, I really do. I have this thing, it's actually patterned after a Boston consulting group. They used to do these matrices for industries, and what you do is basically the following, okay? You do an XY, okay, matrix, and then what you do is you have 4 quadrants, okay? All right, and then usually whatever your variables are here, okay, you want to position in such a way, for instance, it's going from negative to positive, and you want to always kind of try to position yourself in the upper right corner, because psychologically, from an investor perspective, you know, you're like the star. You're right there up in the corner in the sky, and you're going to rule the world. And so what you want to do is set your variables, your differentiation variables, whatever they are, based on elements where, you know, your startup competitor 1 is here, okay? Maybe competitor 2 is there. Maybe competitor 3 is here. Maybe competitor 4 is there. So what you do is, and I've done this very successfully for things, I literally show you as an example where the startup is in relation to the competition. And of course the other thing you have to address is direct versus indirect. Okay, and this is critical. So you may actually say, I have no direct competition, which I'm going to kind of roll my eyes, because usually you do, you just may not even know it. But I know you have indirect competition, no matter how you slice it or dice it. Okay?